Hey guys, Chomsky here. Um, Previously did a video on the 2020 and 2021 Fusion champs, and hey man, let's do 22 and 23, right? So just want to go through them and wax poetic, get nostalgic, all that good stuff. So basically got them, and I organized them so this way I could just talk about them on screen like this. Uh, I guess the first one. Yeah, first one is Jetney the Giant. Um, when she first came out, I really there was not that much scuttlebutt about her of being good or anything like that, but it was just by herself. Alsgore came out, and there's some synergy there, and it's okay. Like going against her and City is fine, but actually having her, she does smack. If you do get her, she's okay. She's increasing crit rate and crit damage. She's ignoring defense. You know, it, she's a she's a fine barbarian champ. Damage dealing, but it's okay. A 50% chance of stun and decreased defense. That's fine. It's just that it's it's fine. If you put her in a hex set or a toxic or a stun set, then it drastically increases her usability just with all these AoEs. But because of stone skin and all that stuff, you definitely need a person to strip away those buffs beforehand. But a solid B plus champ. I mean, really, really basic and really solid. Next up is Oella. She did get worked on. Um, you know, Filling turn meters by 30%. And I'm going to name drop throughout this video as well. Um, there's a dude, Seta77, SETAA 77 on Twitch. Solid dude. He leans into Oella a fair amount. Increases duration of ally buffs. Pretty beefy heal. A decreased speed, although it's only on one dude. That's fine. This continuous heal is pretty sweet. It's nice that this happens no matter what. You know, um, it's a pretty nice one. She's not bad. It's just that I wanted maybe just a little bit more out of her on this A2. It's a 3-turn increased duration. That's not bad. A pretty solid B plus, really good support. On Sylvan Watchers, we always need healing, so that's not bad. Um, Talk about disappointment. I got you a 4-leaf. um, the fusion was okay, but like I kind of have a huge amount of regret. I remember watching Nubraid's video and being kind of smitten with him in Hydra, but the guy was just too clumsy to work on, and I never got a good feel for him. Um, he always puts himself to sleep, which is fine. You know, um, the thing is that like you needed you basically needed him to be alone. Like you can't wake him up with damage or anything like that. And that's basically it. Like it's okay. Uh yeah, you get disappointed when you pull him out of a shard. And to go for a fusion with them was even worse. I definitely regret it. I did get a 6-star blessing for him. I sold that, pulled another one, got the same 6-star blessing, and I was just like, all right, let's do it again. And I got some random, but that was the most exciting thing about 4-leaf that I could talk about. Please, if you have one and you're using them, I would love to know where you're using them because it's just I can't make them work. Speaking of not making work, I got the Worm Eater. Um, you know, it's okay. Like, this was a nice solid run of Plarium busting out meh champs, for fusions. And I feel like, there's this like one like top of the top, and then it's just a typical bell curve. Like one stupendous um, fusion that you should go for that makes you get FOMO from the others, and then in all reality they're all drawn back to the median. So uh, I feel like he's that median as well because he does have some abilities here that is good. Like it's an AoE attack, removing all buffs, and placing a weaken. Okay, cool. So you're attacking, then removing all buffs, and then putting a weaken. Okay. Increasing accuracy, increasing defense, increasing attack, like that. These are solid stuff. It's a 3-turn cooldown and an A3 though. And that's you know make this the A2 and then have the damage really reflect upon that. I think it's okay. Like here is this revival, um, just against lizard men. So okay, um, all right. You know, can be useful. I haven't really used them too many times, so I'm okay with a B minus to a B on them. I could see them being used in maybe Hydra. Just to remove all buffs. That's pretty sweet. You are putting a block buff. Like okay, that there's some use there. Um, Gaius came out, and this was when bombs were trying to make it into meta historically. So it was like, okay, yeah, man, let's get another bomb champ, an additional Shazar, and this guy was it, man. Um, you start off with the A2, placing yeah a sleep and then a bomb. Like okay, cool. So basically that to go off. You know, um, not bad. You would basically build them with like basically be a glass cannon, and then you know that's pretty sweet. Um, outside of outside of PvP, you're not really using them anywhere, so that's fine. Um, I'd give them a C plus. Like yeah, that the only champions that I use bomb is uh is Commodus, and even in Commodus, like yeah, sometimes those bombs, yeah, he just needs a little bit. You basically need an increase attack, increase speed for him to go first. This way you can put the bombs out there. At least with Commodus, there's some other life mechanics. With him as a glass cannon, eh. Emic was really, really useful. When we talk about extending ally buffs and stuff like that, like that was pretty gnarly. Where are you? Maybe. Um, my bad. Apologies. Decreasing the cooldown of ally skills. This was the big one. Busting them out in Hydra was really gnarly. Having a shield, a whole lot of sustainability. This taunt thing was kind of a new mechanic. When Sylvan Watchers came out, like this was the new thing of taunt. So having him with taunt and basically before the Hydra nerf, the Hydra heads were drawn to him. So it allowed for a lot of sustainability. Now, not near it doesn't. It's not a worthwhile buff to bring into Hydra, but in the beginning, sure was. You know, increasing the value of his shield, great. Um, they did buff this because otherwise it was going to be an infinity shield. But when we think about Titus, you know, if you make him with the lowest HP, this could also be really gnarly. Definitely an A to an A plus, just based on the skill cooldown. Like that's a really rad skill. In addition to that, increasing skill, on the attacker. That's pretty neat. You know, I think that's cool. Loriaka, when she first came out, uh, people were bagging on her just because it didn't seem like she was actually doing that much. Um, again, talking about name dropping, JR Star 3 was one of the big. I'm going to talk about him again, but he was making great Hoof Loriaka work. So blocking debuffs, increasing accuracy, really good. Increasing turn meter by a fifth, that's solid. decreasing resistance. You could definitely bring her in to Chimera, and she could definitely do some work. The decreased resistance is pretty big. Not all of us have a Star Sage to bring in there for that one trial. I do, but if you get her, this works. You don't have to bring in so much resistance because there's a 50% decrease accuracy, so that's neat too. So there's definitely a whole lot here. When I first got her, I was like, oh, she just sucks. But now after using her and having other things open up, I definitely put her in the B to B plus range. I think there's some use there. Correction, Chomsky. All these champions have some use, so you could just stop saying that. Good job. I will too. All right, next up is Lana Therill. Dude has a lot of good stuff working for him, right? He's destroying max HP, putting a shield on him, so it works against that Doom Tower, the Scarab King. So that helps. Um, Again, putting that shield out there, this is going to help with Titus. So that's not bad. Having an ally attack, that's really good. Inflicting more damage against targets under shields, you know, that's useful. Like for a high elf, definitely solid. This guy was built for basically damage, or at least the idea of damage. So I think he's good. He's pretty much middle of the pack, like a solid B champ. He's HP, so he's not going to be doing that much damage. But the whole idea is to bring the ally attack component here, you know, and the shield. So he's not bad at all. I if you pull him, great. He he's just basically a cheap version of Cardiel, so not too bad. Next up is Supreme Elhane, the bumped up version of Elhane. I When I started raid, I had Elhane as my starting champ, and I didn't think that she was that bad. Supreme version of her, eh. You know, I definitely wish that they would do a little bit more with her. It, she's a void legendary, attacking one enemy, ignoring strength and shield and ally protect. Cool. Um, Ignore stone skin. This makes it ridiculous, you know, but not the case. She's immune to decrease attack. Okay, you know, bump her up with as much attack as you can, and she's doing a fifth more damage. Okay, you know, yeah, increasing for each debuff on each target. Okay, that's neat. I'm not opposed to it. That's the void talking. But that's I don't know, just more damage. I guess is what I would have wanted. Um, so Supreme Elhane, a solid B, B plus. It's okay. Blizzard. If you there was what for Sand Devil. If you get, there's some speed comps out there for Blizzard for you to get them and finish that off. That's great, dude. Like, dude resurrects himself. You know. So there's definitely some speed tuning that you can do with that. I mean, just because you get him and then you work on those speed tunes, he's definitely an A tier champ because Sand Devil is pretty big. So yeah. There's also Ice Golem ones. You know, there's a lot of other comps out there and speed tunes that you could use, and he could definitely get you there. So that's why I'd give him an A out there just for that. Just yeah, not bad, not bad at all. And then you could also bring him into Fire Knight as well, just because the freezes. So Bivold, uh, I needed this guy. I needed a solid provoke, that can be landed even with weak hits. That's a void right there. That's a void potential. Um, Placing provoke for Hydra was super huge, man. He's all AoE on the A2 and A3, and then you could also place provoke on the A1. That is awesome. I mean, legit, really awesome. So for that, for me, he got an A. I put him in a hex set as well, just for the AoEs just to have that hex, combo, and it worked. So A for me for sure. Newt, this was when I was talking about that bell curve, total outlier, total S tier. We're talking like if you could draft any legendary in the game, Newt is typically within the first three legendaries that a lot of people talk about. And primarily, or really, it's because of the Blessed Bash. You're taking away 30%. You know, um, sorry, you're decreasing the target's defense by 3% each time. So after one hit, that's 9%. After one A3, that's 9%. That's huge. Like that's really big. So not only for the first time, but also the last time that you use this, just huge. And it's based on uh, enemy max HP. That just melts people. Gives himself a counter attack as well, and then also freeze. So Fire Knight, man, any boss really. Um, I still have him in my Iron Twins, and the guy just goes nuts. Absolutely love it. Like I don't think you're gonna find someone speak ill of him. You know, just straight up busted. Morrigan, um, solid B champ, has this heal reduction that comes out. So when we talk about Amius, like that's it, man. You're set. So if you can get to the Amius, you need to get those three keys. If you could get there and you have Morrigan potentially there, you have heal reduction, and that's basically on at all times. She's filling herself up by a fifth, or filling all the turn meters of your allies by a fifth. That's huge. As well as potentially decreasing turn meter on a 4 turn. That's neat, man. I think it's good. True fear against enemies. Decrease accuracy against boss. All right. You know, it sucks because if that true fear would have continued on to bosses, then she could be a pretty solid Chimera candidate, but she's not because you get decreased accuracy instead, and that kind of sucks. But all that said, solid B plus. Uh, because the whole Amius thing, that's what gives her that B plus. Otherwise, I would go with a B minus. And this whole totally subjective Chomsky grading curve. Opardon is next. Really busts out a lot of synergy with Senna, the dwarf with continuous heals and turn meter. I think there's a whole lot there. I try to, granted he's not booked. I try to make it work with Chimera, and I'm not there yet. You know, um, there's a whole lot of healing that's there. Here we're just removing stuff, but it's not a true like cleanse. So it's just okay. You know, it's cool to remove block buffs and heal reduction, but how about everything? Just do a total cleanse. It's not that bad. And then attacking one enemy 2 times. Okay. I'm not really using them for damage. Just that support of continuous heal, really, in healing. And with Senna, that would really go hand in hand. By himself, B minus. With Senna, B plus. Timid. So I talked previously at Loriaka about JR Star 3. Really snazzy dude, knows his stuff. He's just built different when he thinks about champs. Uh, he was a huge Timid fan. He might still be, but huge Timid fan. And this was a pretty big one to basically wipe away the enemy's buffs because for 3 turns, decreasing it, like there's not too many buffs out there that are more than 3 turns or 4 turns. So to basically do a clean sweep, that's pretty awesome. And then if there's no enemies with active buffs, gets an extra turn. So it only cycles this that much quicker. It's a 4-turn cooldown, but really, after using the A2, this this just comes in really quick. You know, he's increasing accuracy. So like you could build him with 300 and that'll still get the job done. Places a true fear. That's just great. And then a fulfillment of turn meter if they are to activate a skill. It's only 10%, but that goes pretty quick, man. Especially when you're dealing with 4 in arena or 5 in any progression. That's pretty big. You know, I I I, I think that's snazzy. So I at first when I got him, I was like, this guy sucks. But I am eating crow, man. Even without Kaja, dude's nutty. Um, that true fear, he's just a chaos dude. And plus, you know, he's really snazzy looking. The fallen Joker type dealy. I I would I would even go A minus on him, just because you you have him busting out those true fears, and then all that turn meter manipulation that he can get with that. I he just cycles through so quick. So really well done. Uh, yeah, I really solid. Next up was Walking Tomb Drain. This one, a lot of the fanfare was for the HP burn that it can't be resisted. So yeah, there. I mean, on Frozen Spider and Doom Tower, you know, this comes into play. An irresistible HP burn, and he's placing it. So that's awesome. You know, then he's activating it as well as an HP balancer. Really useful, really solid, as well as a reflect. Oh man, like solid, like easily usable. You know, build him up with speed. You don't even need accuracy. So like he could be really tanky. You know, like a a really accessible and really good A minus. And to break that streak of A's, we have Marinix. Marinix was weird. You know, she's a dark elf, has hex, and a decreased defense. On paper, this looks phenomenal, right? You're placing hex and a big boy of decreased defense. Awesome. Attacking everybody, you know, um, yeah, it's just that you're not killing people with her because her multipliers are really weak. Uh, I am guilty. I was super excited to get her. A forest champ with hex, love it. Love it, love it, love it. And then increasing her attack by 5% for each enemy, like on paper, looked really good. You know, placing extra hits under a hex, awesome. But like, just really hard to like keep her alive. You know, just everything just went right through her. So she was also very stat dependent. You needed accuracy, you wanted speed because you want to get out there. You needed attack because you need to make her hurt people, you know. But HP and defense was also needed because she's so squishy. So really, it was across the board. You needed something, and that's rough to get. You know, to make that work on a dark elf, like yeah, correction. I don't want to be classist. Just to make it work for any champ is rough, and I only had her on 5 stars because it was during the early stages of Hydra, but like I wanted to make her work. I was really excited, but didn't really happen too much. And mastery wise, I should have gone with Giant Slayer or Helm Smasher, but I'm not going to bother because I'm most likely I'm not going to use her alone for the hex. I would have put her up there, you know, because there weren't too many at that time, and the hex set wasn't really well defined. I now looking back at it, C plus, you know, but I think she could be good if you have a pretty solid team around her, but that could be said for every champ, right? So yeah, C plus, man. Karato, this dude needs Umeko around him to like actually go bananas. To get an AOE block active skill, like that's pretty solid. You know, if you have Yumeko on here, then you don't need that much accuracy because really, this is the only thing you need accuracy for, I think. Block active skills because you're placing a stun. That's easy. Weaken, weaken's fine. But like you basically have to have a Yumeko here. So with those buddy champs, it's really hard to actually make them work. Like thinking Venus and Cupidus, like there's that synergy there. You know, White King, Narses and Cora, that's fine. But like here, I thought it was they were in over their head a little bit. I think Kurato's fine, a solid B champ. I'm not gonna get mad if I pull him because it's a Shadowkin damage dude. But uh, eh, I'd just be like, basic. And I mean, these were all fusions, so like, yeah, I expected a bigger highlight on them, and that's fine. Helicath, dude, A plus. Gonna put it out there, A plus. Uh, Putting out their shield is pretty big. I talked about this with Titus. I This may be really good. That good synergy with Titus because you're putting out their shield that's based on her, his, its, uh, its defense, and the defense is usually pretty high, but you're putting out their block damage too. You know that's really neat. And then if that fails, you're putting out there an increased defense. That's pretty sweet. And then he's counterattacking. It's counterattacking. You know, ignoring shield and block damage. Like, dude's busted. He's still in my Iron Twins. You could put him in Clan Boss. Um, he doesn't have feet, but like he doesn't need it. Really solid champ. Um, I would put him in a 9-piece protection. So yeah, like really solid. I wouldn't put him at S tier, but he's like top of the A plus tier. That's a lot of tiers. Raz is next. Another A champ. Uh, Dude really helped out with Hydra. You know, I think he was one of the first ones that had based on attack and speed. So crank him up with as much speed, accuracy, and all that fun stuff. Like you could have him built for damage as well. I didn't really care too much for it, um, so that's okay. But yeah, just crank him up with accuracy and speed, some attack. HP is gonna kind of suck, but there's leech, so there's some self healing there. I had him in a counterattack just so this way there's more chances of him attacking again, for more turn meter. So really solid. Uh, I pulled I pulled another, but I'm waiting for a second Raz to make him +4. But definitely really good. A plus to borderline S tier. Just awesome stuff, man. Like really great fusion. And speaking of great fusion, Islan, just really awesome. Uh, he basically heals himself, and there's a whole lot here. But for you to do that much damage against them, you really need to come in heavy. So in PvP, this guy was kind of a pain because you'd have those never-ending matches. You would try to hurt him, he'd heal himself, and it was just a pain in the ass. So you crank him up with as much defense and as much HP as possible. You could do a lot of crit rate and crit damage, but it's fine. You know, the tricky thing for me myself, I always have difficulty getting a lot of resistance. So I built him up with a lot of accuracy, some speed, but a lot of people do bust out a lot of resistance on their Islan. Just this way, their ally protect and increased defense doesn't get stripped. Um, he's a menace in Hydra as well. You know, just the decrease of durations. Decrease speed, and then provoke. Like the guy's really good for Hydra. If you pull him, he's I. mm, I don't want to tell you what you should do, but busting him out to 6 and 60 is pretty imperative, really, for any type of hydro progression. Provoke, ally protect, healing, decrease speed, decrease buffs. Like that's phenomenal. Um, nowadays, like just with power creep, he's not necessarily an S tier, but he's definitely in consideration for it. And speaking of there's three more champs that are in consideration for S tier. So Mighty Uko, definitely in the works for it. You could he could potentially steal buffs, which is neat. Um, Reviving, you know, like if you need speed, there you go. But I don't really do that. Reviving all dead allies. It sucks that the turn meter doesn't get bumped up, but that's fine. You get black damage out there. More stealing, right? Um, I'm sorry, not stealing, but removing, and then placing block buffs and decrease accuracy. Hydra, you know, attacking all enemies, placing decrease attack. You're gonna have accuracy anyways, because you want um, you want this to kick in. So like you want to remove. I keep on saying steal, but really solid champ. Like really S tier discussion for sure. Um, Nowadays it gets kind of rough. I don't see Mighty Uko too often in any type of arena or live arena. Definitely in tag team, but she still he still puts in a lot of work, man. Just the Warthog is solid. Definitely up there. And speaking of up there, is Pytheon. Dude's just gnarly. You talk about tanky resistant champs, like Pytheon's up there. You have the revive with half turn meter, strengthen, uh, removing a cleanse, healing, and then healing the least amount. This guy was really, really big and still usable, like especially for Lizardmen and Faction Wars. Really, really solid. I at one point S tier, but now with power creep, he's definitely in the A tier. But really, really close to S tier just because, like honestly, like really, really tanky, and you're set. A non S tier is Nari. I would I would go with B minus, and that's me being really, really generous. He has provoking counterattack. You don't see counterattack that often. So for him to have counterattack and then stealing a random buff, that's cool. I get it. You know, decrease accuracy, decrease resistance. Okay, but like, just not not the greatest. He was during the St. Pat's fusion, so they were trying to, you know, I don't know. I think they were trying to like lessen the whole drunken Irish thing after Yoshi the drunkard was the previous year's uh, St. Patty's fusion. So I think it's okay. I I don't really use them. You know, I have a 3-star. I have a +4 with Brimstone. I think he's still naked. No, I may have messed around with him, but like nothing the greatest. One that is great, and I'll do that up there. I think I I think he deserves an S tier. Vermin Lord Nishak. I think he's all the way up there, man. He's a bomb champ. You start off with the A3, and then you keep going. Um, yeah, in PvP, you're not going to get 200,000 HP on any of those champs, but that's fine. You toss out there a bomb, it decreases by 1 turn. So this way, when it's their turn, boom, it detonates. That's awesome. You know, 40% chance to place a bomb, 50%, 3 times at random. That's neat. But what's cool is that they leave a wake of poison, which is awesome. They're protected, so you can't really take them away, and that's neat. So, like, he was everywhere in arena for me. Like, really took him everywhere. Just did a whole lot of work for me. and I'm not mad about it. I'm glad I went for his fusion because he brought me into gold 4, and I used them in live arena a lot, just because the poisons and the bombs and all that fun stuff. And then polymorph happened, and that sucked. So whatever. But really, really solid champ. S tier for sure. And just really, really good. I feel like, and spoiler alert, uh, 24, the 2024 fusion's really good too. But I feel like, we see this progression of power creep as well, and matching that wave with all these fusions now. So like, obviously the more current ones are going to be beefed up a little bit. They have a little bit more to bring to the table, and I could definitely I can make a case for many of these. Like Nari, I can't. Um, Supreme Elhane and Gaius, I can't. You know, Bombus. So like 4 out of 25. That's one. Like, you know, yeah. I still living along that 15% line of regrettable fusion champs. So just something to keep in mind. That I'm thinking about this for Titus, but I'm also thinking about it for future fusions. Like, who's going to be the disappointing one? And that's always the prevailing thought I have. But yeah, those are all those champs I thought of, that I want to talk about, and this is definitely longer than the previous one, so I apologize. But uh, please lay it on me. Tell me where I got it wrong, or tell me where I got it right. Looking forward to hearing from you. Um, or see me on Twitch, Noman My Chomsky on twitch.com. Yeah, lay it on me. Talk to you soon. Bye, bye, bye.